Last update, I went through the daily and the intraday and touched briefly on this topping tail. We got a bearish gravestone doji on the NASDAQ that, again, very well could mark a peak with the negative divergence that is formed in the weekly time frame. Through all that information in my last update, daily and the intraday charts, that show you weekly chart on S&P and briefly show you this zooming out negative divergence one more time on NASDAQ. Quickly, I just showed you these weekly charts on NASDAQ, and I'll show you the S&P real fast. Again, the divergence here. Again, this trend line excludes the shadow here. It's the log scaling. Obviously, I'd drawn the trend line from back over here, and here I'm just connecting these levels, and we're slamming up into it right here with the topping tail, the possible reversal bar. The divergence is forming. The NASDAQ weekly chart. This is the log scaling. Linear scaling, I have this channel. It's more of a channel with the linear scaling. Again, connecting this high to this peak right here. We overthrew that with the black line, overthrew it with our topping tail slightly. That might be the case. Again, sometimes you overthrow it with the topping tail. Here we have the trend line including the topping tail here, including the shadow, and it came right up to that level, and that's parallel to this lower boundary. So a nice looking channel here, nice looking rising wedge with the log scaling. This is a linear divergences forming with both, much like what we had over here. The other divergences that I've talked about on the MACD. The S&P daily or weekly chart got a little bit of a topping tail here in the weekly time frame, having pushed above the channel, pushed back below it. I'll be watching to see, do we stop making new highs, or do we form those divergences on the 60-minute charts that I talked about in great length and detail in my last update. I'll link that video at the end of this one. Important information in that video. Get a chance to see it, go watch it. The daily charts, we had candles of indecision on Friday. I talk about that, and also look at the 60-minute charts. But here we'll be looking at momentum after the weekly charts and the trend signals real fast. Topping tail, let's zoom out and take a look at this. This is, again, the S&P weekly chart. Again, you have a possible, with the topping tails, you could get a confirmation. If you do end up selling off next week, you can get a reversal. Here you would have a possible evening star reversal. You have a wide range bar out there, and you have a narrow range bar that has kind of a topping tail in the form of a shooting star here. And if we turned and we got a red bar, a wide range bar, red bar next week, then you would have an evening star reversal. Just like on the NASDAQ, the topping tail, the smaller topping tail here, the S&P or NASDAQ got a better one. Usually with a shooting star, you want to see it a longer candlestick than, or longer wick than that on the top. Again, it's either a very sloppy pattern, but again, if it is to be confirmed as a topping tail, we need to close below this level next week. And then again, possible evening star with a narrow range body with a little topping tail there, and then we get a red range bar. So just something to be paying attention to, whether that candle pattern forms or not. See, I went through the bullish and the bearish scenarios. The divergences in the weekly time frame still go higher, but with these little topping tails, it is possible that they are done. Did form a divergence between the S&P and NASDAQ. S&P was slightly higher. NASDAQ got a lower high, lower than Monday's high. It got a lower high. S&P went higher. Sometimes they diverge at turning points, although may not be done yet. Signals turn bearish. That hasn't happened yet. Here it is on the weekly chart. If we zoom out, and again, you still got this divergence going on here. Here again, this is perfectly parallel to this lower boundary if we slightly exclude the shadow there. And again, say I connected this peak with this peak. If we just have it perfectly parallel, excluding the shadow, we hit that level this week and overthrew it. I talked about overthrowing it when I was connecting it to this level, but we overthrew it and we ended up closing just right under that trend line. So again, it is possible divergence is now complete if we don't form a divergence on the 60-minute charts, which again, I went through in great length and detail last video. So you can see that linked at the end of this video. You got the same divergences going on here, the MACD. I want to point something out here. Again, this candle looks very, very similar to this candle over here. Again, kind of a sloppy topping tail. We went back up tested it the following week, but then got a reversal. Could see something similar to that here, but just a divergence was present in 2022 right there. Again, we've got the same thing going on right now. NASDAQ's got a multiple point divergence. The last one gave us the sell-off after the March high. This divergence will likely produce a reversal for NASDAQ and S&P. And just as S&P formed a divergence at the 2022 peak right here on the OSM oscillator, we're doing the same thing right now. The bullish divergence down here. Here we've got this negative divergence. And you can see it on the OSM oscillator. We had a red bar earlier in the week. And again, I talked about this previously, but just wanted to review it real fast. Be watching for red OSM oscillator bar. Next week, I'll be watching to see if we start a turning point, if this week's high holds, or if we go test it or even go a little higher. I showed you at the 2022 top, but I'll be watching to see if we start seeing this divergence play out. It's likely going to start very soon. Investors are extremely complacent. Same thing on NASDAQ. Again, the OSM oscillator has this divergence. We got our second red bar with the S&P 500 OSM oscillator. There's still the possibility the RSI forms a divergence, as I talked about in great length and detail my last several updates and talked about it in my last update, both NASDAQ and S&P, but I'll be watching to see what happens. Again, do we start selling off and then go back up? Do we start selling off? That's it. We go up with the doji immediately and get a peak and then begin to turn before the week ends. We'll be watching to see how it unfolds. CD has still not rolled over. I talked about the possibility of still going higher with that 60-minute chart and the RSI, my last update. Our second red bar, NASDAQ got its first red bar on Friday. Again, OSM oscillator moved to a new high. MACD moved to a new high. So did the RSI. So there still is a possibility of a divergence if we start selling off. It could be that, again, we start selling off and NASDAQ doesn't form a divergence, but S&P does. Big sell-off with their weekly chart. We got the topping tail for the Gravestone Doji on NASDAQ. Please support the channel with the link directly below that allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you follow the link, it'll take you to a secured site. You can donate any amount you want or make it a recurring donation. If you do that, I thank you. Please consider partnering with me. I just put out the information and just ask that you do what you can to help out. Like the chart, if you like the indicators, let me know that by supporting the channel today. If you could take a moment to do that, I would really deeply appreciate it. In my last update, I talked about, again, the 60-minute chart. We're going to see a divergence develop here and early on next week. We break the trend line, we're back testing, and we're going to start now taking out the 50 and this horizontal support level. Into great length and detail, my last update, I'll link that video at the end of this one talking about that. The signals I'll be showing you in this video, they're still bullish. I'm still bullish. Trend signals are still bullish. Seeing some weakness here in the 60-minute time frame. Do we get back above the momentum line? Do we get back above the momentum cloud, or do we have a back test and we start going down further? Even if we do, as I've said, we could still form a divergence on the RSI in the daily time frame against something like that. I'm going to be showing you the signals. I'm watching to see, are we going to form a divergence here on the RSI or not? Have a break of the trend line and a back test. We need to take out this level and the 50 period if we're going to see a bigger dump. Does the MACD firm up here at the center line, or does it go into negative territory? I talked about all of that in my last update. It was linked at the end of this one. Next week we'll have a couple of Fed speakers, but we're going to get the PCE inflation. We'll get the GDP revision. Thursday on Friday we'll get the PCE inflation data. There's that possible reversal bar in the weekly time frame on NASDAQ, a Gravestone Doji. A similar bar on NVIDIA. NVIDIA did get a topping tail, possibly a shooting star here. Again, we'll be watching as NVIDIA stop making new highs. It was down 4% for the week. Got a big, ugly looking red bar. Didn't quite get fully engulf this previous bar here. We did on a intraday low, but we had gapped down there and got, again, a candle of indecision there on Friday. This is a daily chart of NVIDIA. So again, if it is starting to reverse, so will NASDAQ. They got very similar bars. Actually got a bearish engulfing. Didn't quite cut the mustard here with NVIDIA, but you got the red bar, and now we're closing below that level. We got candles of indecision on NASDAQ, S&P, and here on NVIDIA. If we start seeing NVIDIA begin to turn down, the NASDAQ follows, could begin to see a sell-off. It'll all begin to start turning bearish. As we go into next week, watch the dojis. Are they going to be continuation to the downside, or will they mark a short-term bottom? We go back up again, and the 10-period moving average. We have to below the 10-period moving average and get a reversal of conditions. If there's going to be any kind of sell-off, those divergences are going to play out. The question is, how will it unfold when they do? Again, I've talked about both the bullish and bearish scenario in my last update regarding the 60-minute charts, the daily charts. But I'll be watching the 10-period moving average going forward on the daily chart of the S&P. Signals remain bullish for momentum and trend. We'll be watching to see if they change here. Did get a little bit of signs of distribution with Thursday's sell-off on the S&P 500. Again, signals remain bullish. Critical mass here. Start to reverse, we need to drop below it, and it needs to turn red and start turning down. Again, signals remain bullish. Here remains bullish. Getting a sell-off, seeing those divergences play out in the weekly time frame. Again, you've got a shot at a head and shoulders formation. If we start seeing a big sell-off, we did close back below the upper Bollinger Band on the S&P and on the NASDAQ. We still may go up, form the diversions on the 60-minute chart, but we got the doji. It could be a continuation down or a rebound. Even if we go higher, it may remain under the Bollinger Band. Like right here, we had the peak, we turned down below it, and then we went back up, and we were getting a higher high, but we remained below it to form the diversions. Basically something similar to that. We get that divergence on the 60-minute chart. But again, at this 9-9 count I've talked about, we got I told you weekend I expected to go higher on the S&P and complete the 9 count on NASDAQ and get a perfected sell signal here. And I told you we can go a little higher. We've done that to complete a perfected sell signal, and then now we're kind of stalling out. Be watching, does that start a reversal? Does it flip signals to bearish? Again, we have the possibility of a head and shoulders pattern. That if we complete a top here or go a little higher and then complete it to coming back down going forward. The pattern is possible, but too early to tell whether it will play out. Watching for a reversal. If it does, then the odds start increasing, start getting bearish signals. Divergences start playing out on the weekly charts. Again, NASDAQ got that bearish engulfing candlestick, clearly a bearish engulfing with the doji the day before. It made a high on Monday with the 9 count, a perfected sell signal, a 9-9. That perfected the sell signal on the S&P, as I talked about. We got a candle of indecision in the form of a spinning top. Again, it could be a continuation. We can get a bounce immediately, and then again, we'll be watching, does reversal begin, do the signals begin to flip? But we did complete a 9-9, and again, oftentimes the 9 will mark a turning point immediately, which so far that high is holding. Other times you go a little higher and then you turn. We'll be watching to see what happens here. The 9 count could be either a pullback or a reversal. Given the divergence in the weekly time frame, it's likely going to produce a reversal. Again, you've got the possibility of the head and shoulders formation here. NASDAQ daily chart. Again, we closed below the upper Bollinger Band with this bearish engulfing candlestick. We closed right on the band there with the doji on Tuesday. We had a short trading week, and then Thursday we got that off, and this right here has produced that topping tail, the gravestone doji on the weekly chart. Talked about in this video and the last video. Now again, at the moment, the momentum and the trend remain bullish as we're forming those negative divergences in the weekly time frame. We'll be watching to see if a reversal starts, or if we go a little higher, form a divergence on the 60-minute chart, RSI, and then turn, or if we start some kind of turn immediately. Keep your eye on those divergences. Likely going to play out very soon. Here, momentum is bullish. The trend is still bullish. We'll be watching to see if that changes in the not too distant future. S&P 500. Here, momentum is still bullish with our candlesticks being green, reflecting the trend being green, reflecting momentum. It had started to turn red here, but again, flip the trend signals as I talked about. Saw the momentum turn back up here. Momentum line turn back up as well, and start to turn. I'll be watching for momentum line to turn red. I'll be watching for red bars. We're going to be the first to flip if we start going down, which will mean either we're going sideways and then we'll get a divergence like that, or we go up and get a divergence, or is what could happen is we just start a reversal and that's it. Stop making new highs. If momentum shifts, we got to change the trend signals. Got to take out this lower boundary of the cloud. You got to take out this line, which represents the trend. Drop below the 100 period moving average if we're going to get a bigger reversal and sell-off. And we would need to see signal momentum here go into the negative region like it did over here. Form that little divergence right there, and we went 3 points higher. Signals remain bullish. I'll be watching to see if they flip with those negative divergences on the weekly chart. Let me just show you the 60-minute chart in the S&P 500. We did get sell signals and we began to pull back. This line right here represents the trend. If we start taking it out, we're going to get a bigger sell-off. Bounce off of it, again, like I talked about with the RSI, you could still get a divergence and come up here and take out this high and still form a divergence. And the same for NASDAQ. But at Thursday's high there, we did get sell signals for momentum and the trend. And again, that has played out on the 60-minute chart. Question is, does it keep going down or do we revert back up and try to get a divergence? So just something I'm paying attention to in the 60-minute time frame. And then signals for the trend remain bullish. With reference to the candlesticks, again, they tried to turn here, couldn't take out and flip the trend signals. And again, we continue to have green momentum, still bullish here. So again, we'll be watching to see if momentum begins to flip. Balance of power remains positive. NASDAQ getting that topping tail in the weekly time frame. I'll be watching what happens with the divergence. Is that candlestick going to get confirmed next week? Is it going to hold as a high? Topping tail on the candlestick, so just some things to be watching on NASDAQ. And if it starts going lower, NVIDIA starts going lower, do we start seeing momentum shift with the S&P 500? Signals remain bullish. We're watching to see if momentum signals begin to turn divergences on the charts. If they start to play out momentum signals that I'm showing you, they'll be the first to turn. If it turns, it means we're either going sideways to form a divergence or we're starting a reversal, one or the other. I told you back over here, again, something big was getting ready to happen. I told you I still thought we were going to go higher there. And then right here, again, I thought we'd get that CPI rally. We did go up and hit the upper channel line or overthrow it. We've overthrown it. Told you it might get redefined. It looks like it is, but divergence looks like it's coming to a conclusion in the weekly time frame there on the RSI and on the Awesome Oscillator. We'll be watching momentum as we go into next week. Continues to show strength, and again, a double bottom here at horizontal support in this channel. We've had a bottoming tail in the weekly time frame. It got a follow through or a confirmation here. Trying to get a follow through. We closed pretty much right at that level, being above it during the week. We closed just pretty much right at that level. So again, we'll need to see a little bit more of a convincing follow through if that's going to be the case. Again, we've had a 3-week winning streak now on the dollar. It could pull back a little bit, but we do have confirmation. And then again, we'll be looking for a solid push above this area for the confirmation, which again, the dollar has a negative correlation with the stock market. It's been interesting though, as well, the dollar has been rising. We've had the 10-year back, but the dollar has broken the downtrend. And again, it has back tested. Got the bottoming tail. This is the monthly chart right here, and we're holding above that 20-month moving average. The dollar could be headed higher towards this upper channel line, or even a little bit higher if it is more parallel. This is just kind of connecting these levels. But here you see on the weekly chart again, we broke the downtrend right here, and then we back tested it, and we got that bullish hammer. It got a confirmation, and again, the follow through really close was really pretty much at an equal level there. be looking for a better follow through in the weekly time frame. But as the dollar has formed that channel, it pulled back, formed the channel, and has been rebounding last 3 weeks. We've been still carving up a channel here. I've just drawn a parallel line from these highs right here and these lows, excluding the shadow right here, and that's where we're at. We had a hollow red candlestick. I'll be watching to see if the 10-year attempts a rebound. Both the dollar and the 10-year yield tend to have a negative correlation with the S&P. At some point, that's going to change with the 10-year because we're moving towards recession. The deflationary forces will begin to kick in, and the stock market, as we move towards recession, will start moving down, and the yield will likely do the same, and correlation will likely turn back to a positive correlation rather than a negative. And then it will likely have a negative correlation with treasuries like year treasury, or I'm sorry, the 20-year treasury bond fund, TLT, things like that. So eventually that's going to happen. We'll see what happens here. Still might go higher for a while, but at some point, as we move towards recession or pivots, this should start going back down. So we'll be watching for that. And they continue to have a negative correlation, the negative territory, showing that the correlation is negative.